Morning, everyone. Today we're going to talk about M.O.D.O.K 2 in Convocation. So this idea comes from Usaboy1210, who is in the Discord, talked to me in some DMs and stuff. I think I want to say he's Spanish, but I'm not 100%. Sorry if I'm wrong. Anyway, he's been preaching this M.O.D.O.K 2 in Convocation for a while, and obviously I went down my route of club ball location, which is I'm still playing in lunch meet. I'm still 2-0 there. I have a big game tomorrow against Alex Bots. Not the point. The point of this video is to talk about M.O.D.O.K 2. So, in playing my list, I was like, listen, what would happen if I went back to solo convocation? What would my list look like? Because it's been a little bit of a hot minute since I played it, and I've been focusing on the duel for a while. And I said, okay, what would I do if I went back? And so, I think he recently went 3-0 at a local event and was talking about M.O.D.O.K, and I was like, all right, let's look at him more succinctly or whatever, and really think about how he would perform in a pure convocation list as, one of those 4 threat splashes that we like to have. And so, yeah, let's just talk about him. Let's just do the normal convocation view. So we'll get a stat line 335. We always like to see high mystic attack, mystic defense, I've said this before where I don't care that much. Like, I care, but I don't care. Obviously, it helped. I guess for a piece like this, if you pile on like a lot of high mystic attack defenses, it kind of bowls over. I guess what I mean to say is, I don't discount someone like Rhino because he has a low mystic defense. I think there are 2 ways to think about this. One, if you have a team that's generally good against mystic attackers like Strange is, people will take less mystic attacks, and thus Rhino doesn't, his downside, air quotes too, it's whatever, is mitigated some. And the other side is not everyone has to be good with books, right? Rhino's pretty tanky. You like when people hit him. Like, you'd be fine with Rhino getting hit instead of your other people when books is up. So not everyone has to be good with books to be taken. Now, in a list like this, if you start piling on people who are good against physical attackers and they have good mystic defenses, I think it can become, you get to the saturation point where it's like, who am I going to attack? And we'll talk a little bit about that when we talk about like specific lists themselves. And one thing nice about, M.O.D.O.K, and we'll just go straight to it at the bottom, he gets blanks when he gets attacked by Mystic. So, and he can't be pushed or advanced. So he has a thing like Ultron, where, if you turn, Black Panthers is a good example. Black Panther can push M.O.D.O.K with his physical attack, but if you have books up, he can't push him because of that ability. Same with Ultron. So there are some physical attack pushes, Hulk, for example, that get turned off by books and these abilities. And blanks is better than double wilds. It's, if you think about it just mathematically, right? It's, there's 2 blank sides. There's only 1 wild side and counts as double. I don't actually know. I just know mathematically it's better to have blanks. But I guess double wilds is, quote unquote, the same as reverse pierce from a pure, like, number standpoint, but reverse pierce is better because you can get rid of triggers and stuff. So now you're talking 3 characters, if you take Ultron, that have either some extra defense on their mystic with his reverse pierce, double wilds, or blanks, and then they have 5 defense. So he's great with books. Great. 7 health. He's 7-5. I think that's the only difference on the backside. I will confirm. Oh. Ooh. Ooh. Oh, that's sweet. Didn't even notice that. I've only played 1 game with him, and he didn't get flipped. So we will talk about that. So he's 7-5, so 12 health for a 4 threat, the same as like Red Skull 2. It's pretty typical, I'd say, or not weird at all. Being 7-5, I'd say, is better overall. Just, I think being harder to kill on the front side is usually more impactful. It just is. 7-5 is probably better than 6-6. He's a 4 threat, so we'll compare him to some other 4 threats. He's 3 size, not pretty good for most things. You're not being able to push by Sam. It's hard to throw him, like somebody like Miss Marvel, for example, can't push or throw him. So there are some advantages there. Being thrown into your own team, being size 3 is a little bit annoying, but you just live with it. Alright, so let's see attack. So he has a 4 range, 5 dice. I think the big comparison I'm going to do here, just to be honest is Red Skull 3. Because I think Red Skull 3 is talked about as a good splash for Convocation. And I think comparing him to Red Skull 3 has a lot of value in that case. I'm not going to bring up Red Skull 3's card, but I know it by heart. So they both, 4 range, 5 dice, choose between physical or energy. Always nice to be able to choose between 2. There are a lot of people who have 1 or bad defense. Probably Mystic is a better one to be choosing if you really think about like Mystic or energy in Red Skull 3. But, I mean, there's nothing wrong with being able to choose between physical and energy here. Things like M.O.D.O.K, who is like better on 1, you can kind of deal with them. It really spreads your attack types out. If you think of Strange being able to pick multiple things, he can pick multiple things. And Strange is basic as a builder, so you have builders, you get what I'm saying. He has an Incinerate trigger on a wild. No one's going to complain about an Incinerate trigger. It's one of the better ones. Shock on Red Skulls is really good too. It's range 4. He's also on a big base. I think I missed that in the I guess it would have been at the bottom. So being on a 65 mil is really nice. Very big bump ranges. Very easy to make some plays. We'll talk about the plays later, but the big base is a big thing, obviously. Short move, sure. Big base short move is longer than small base medium move. As far as like base to base goes, obviously harder to fit places. So from a standpoint of like being too slow, air quotes, I think he's just as quick as like a small base medium mover if you want to think about him like that. He has a spender that's a 7 dice mystic for 4, range 3, so not the longest range. Free advance even without doing damage, and then a stun before damaging, which is really nice. It's a really good ability to have in general, just against some things in the game. It's a better spender than Red Skull 3 for sure. Red Skull 3 is just 4 for 7 dice and a semi-difficult trigger that can hit another person. I think this one just being a free move no matter what is really strong, and having a stun before damage on a wild is also really good. So from a control standpoint, he can incinerate you, he can stun you before damaging, he can move you with his attacks. I'd say a pretty good attack kit. We won't worry about his leadership because we're not going to be using him as a leader in this case. Red Skull 3 did have the advantage of going in the duel, and I guess you could technically do a Crim duel if you really wanted. Haven't thought about it too much. So when we compare to Red Skull 3, I will not talk about either leadership. So he has a throw. So he's size 4, range 3 with a small for 3. Red Skull 3 is a size 3, range 3 with a medium. I probably prefer having the longer throw distance, but having size 4 throws along with like Ultron and stuff, like getting rid of those big terrain pieces, it's good. Having a throw is good. Like he has a lot of ways to spend his power pretty well. He can take power from other people to get rerolls on his attacks. I don't know. I'm sure it's fine. Like situationally, like one of your Wong gets beat up, and then you want to take his power because he doesn't need it all. I'm sure there's uses for it. It's not my favorite ability on him, but I'll take it. And he gets to a reverse bodyguard, or he can bodyguard himself to somebody else, sacrifice essentially. This is a really strong ability, and I think this is the ability that is really talked about from the guy who splashes him all the time and brought him up, is because you can. You have to kind of be an Ultron player too, because it really works well with Ultron, because you can sacrifice to the grunts. So depending on the situation of the game, you can have something where you attack M.O.D.O.K with an attack and he pays 2, and then you blow up Ultron's grunts, and if they're in your face, they blow up and give Ultron power. You can do chain attacks where like Ultron sacks to M.O.D.O.K and M.O.D.O.K sacks to the grunts, and now the grunts blow up. That's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Like if you sack to M.O.D.O.K, he can then put it on somebody else. I'm sure that'll catch some people off. It's just a good ability. With bump. So sack is already pretty good with bump because you can kind of pick the people you want to get attacked, and then they get to bump reactively, get some power maybe. Sacking to Ultron is pretty nice a lot of times because you want him to have some power, you want him to maybe get a bump to get into a certain position. Not having to spend the card is nice. Not having to use Ultron's power, getting cover, getting double. Well, you always get double wilds anyway. But I'm just saying that like there are benefits that not using the card and just being able to do it with M.O.D.O.K. So I mean that's really it. I mean on the backside it becomes free, well, which is really obnoxious because then you really can't attack him if he's near somebody because he'll just pass it off for free. And so now you have this 4th threat who has a pretty good attack profile. If you compare it to Red Skull 3, very similar throws. I think the big difference would be he's better with books. Red Skull 3 can burn other people's power to do his throw, and he has a scalpel that's built in, which is a lot of uses as well. But I don't know, man. I think if you compare him like straight up, I think M.O.D.O.K is actually a better choice than Red Skull 3 as a splash if you're not going like a dual affiliation. So some things I like. Okay, so being on a big base has a lot of advantages for bumps. One is if somebody's in range 2 of you, you can always bump out of their range because your base +1 is longer than a range 2 attack. Like a 50. The trick with a 50 millimeter is if you're ever trying to like go after Strange and like prevent his bump from getting away, you have to base him because then if you're even a fraction of an inch, like a bump away plus the base is exactly range 2. So if you're anywhere like with a gap, he can get away. And so with bump, like it's even better because if you're trying to go after M.O.D.O.K, and he always, I don't know, when I think of M.O.D.O.K because he's a big base and stuff, you think of him as being like this big 5-6 threat piece, but he's not. He's only a 4. And he's not like he's statted like a 5 or anything. But I don't know. There's a perception there because he is on a big base that he should be worth more. Weirdly, I don't know why I think that. But the fact that, like, if you are going after him and you think you're going to put multiple attacks into him, like, he can bump and then, like, sack the second attack with Bodyguard onto Grunts. So you might be like, oh, he's not near his Grunts. I'm going to go after him. And then he bumps next to him. And now you're in trouble because he's going to sack him. You can't attack him again. Other things, it's nice on hammers to be able to start next to the hammer or anything, just to be able to start next to a portal. Even on something like spider portals, for example, I don't know if I would do this because I don't know how good he is on Ds. He's probably not that good with the short move. But just in theory, he could start next to the portal, right? Flip it, and if he gets placed, he still has 2 move actions to get to where he needs to go. So it's not the end of the world. Like, it's not like he's walking up and then get placed back and then he can only walk back. He kind of like, he starts there so he doesn't waste a move. Can a Senator, I don't think he can reach, I don't think a big base is big enough to reach a Senator, unfortunately. I know a medium base gets an extra 2 inches. He's only an inch bigger. Yeah, I don't think it works. I don't think a large base fits between a Senator and a D, but it doesn't matter. He doesn't need it. I haven't explored the big base stuff fully yet, but the other thing I like about it is one thing I was thinking about was there's a lot of turn 1 scalpel plays you can do with Strange where you give him a power with Wong and scalpel somebody up, but at some point, like, how much does it get you to a certain extent, like, if you have to walk anyway. So I'll give you a perfect example. If you're on Scoundrels and you have M.O.D.O.K or Ultron, if you scalpel Ultron, he doesn't get to the center point. He still has to walk and then he gets an attack. So essentially you're paying 4 power to give him an advance. Like, almost like, yeah, he can get farther up, but for the most part, just generally speaking, you are paying 4 power to give him an advance, a walk or something, which is fine. Like there are, like, whether you move him a range 2 or range 3, it's not a huge difference if you're just trying to get to the middle point. Range 2 plus a walk would give him to mostly anywhere, I think, on the middle that he wants. And so what I mean by that is large bases are interesting because if they're scalpel turn 1, range 3, they actually make it to the midpoint in one go. So on something like Intrusions, for example, if you scalpel M.O.D.O.K, and I'm not saying you should, but if you do, if you scalpel M.O.D.O.K, he'll make it to the midpoint, and so he can double attack from the midpoint, right? So otherwise he'd have to double walk. So you're almost giving him 2 walks because of that, 2 actions. So there is something with like large bases and stuff that you are, if you're willing to like teleport them up turn 1, you do make it to the middle, right? Let's just do the math on that real quick. Oh, I think it works out. You get 6 inches and 6 inches because of the place and your deployment, so that gives you 12. You get two of your bases, which is 65 plus 65, which is 130, which is 5 and a bit. So 12 plus 5 is 17, and the point's in the middle. So you're 17 up, so you're within a half an inch. Yeah, you're like within over less than a half an inch from the center line. Or just about an inch from the center line, which is fine because you're on the point. So yeah, I mean, if you think of it like that from a math perspective, it actually has some uses. Now are you wasting Strange because he's gonna have to double walk? Like it's not a perfect thing, but it's not bad either. It's not bad either to like just teleport around, or late in the round, move Strange somewhere else, get ready for round two, and now M.O.D.O.K is ready to go. Um, it's funny because he's been talking about the M.O.D.O.K for a while, and I haven't thought too hard about it. I didn't dismiss it as bad, but I haven't thought too hard about it. I run Rhino as one of my fours. I had Red Skull in there, and I don't really run Red Skull under Convo anyway because it's not fun with he doesn't have better Mystic. He doesn't pump well. There's nothing inherently amazing about him under. Since I don't really run Planes of Podok, I don't really care about if people have Mystic attacks. Red Skull's builder being Mystic I don't care. But bumping. Another thing is, for example, he likes to play E shapes. I think he plays Gamma Demon Intrusions, and I don't know if I'd go that far. But one thing to note is if you can be on the mid demons or gamma, and if you get attacked, you can bump all the way back to the back one. So you have an opportunity to where if you're getting attacked to bump between the points. Very easy to bump out of range of things or into range if you really want to get in range for your throw or your bodyguard. I think you can actually, because he's only 4 threat, and because when he flips his bodyguard becomes 0, I think you can be a little more aggressive with M.O.D.O.K and take some damage early and get some power and then do stuff. If they're not attacking other people, and it's not like he's inherently super weak to attacks. The big thing, the big thing with Ultron is because it's so easy to get the grunts back with Ultron and him, you can just keep sacking to the grunts if you want to and getting your books back. And so now I wouldn't call it a book cycling strategy in a case of oh my god, everything I'm going to do in this turn is to get books back. But I think it gives you another option that makes it easier to get books back while also doing something really good, right? If you're just throwing terrain into your grunts that are not near anything, that is not a great book cycling strategy. I've done it, but it's not a great. But if you're pawning it, if you're forcing somebody to attack your grunts, it's really strong, and it's a hard puzzle to solve, especially because you can chain it in a way where you can protect multiple people if you have sacrifice, because you can hit one, hit M.O.D.O.K, hit the grunts. So there's lots of big attacks that just become you can't do them. You're in a bubble if you can't do it. And it also sets up something that I usually don't do, but it's nice in this case. If you have Ultron, M.O.D.O.K, and Strange, which you can pretty much easily play at anything 19 or 20, and if you take enough scenarios that are 19, 20, it's pretty easy to fit in. I think you can take it at 18. 18's tough. You need no, that's impossible, right? 18, you pretty much can't do it. You would need to drop Strange to do it. I don't think you're going to drop Strange to do it. But 19 or 20s are common enough, and if you take enough of them, half your games are going to be on 19 or 20s anyway. I think he had all 19s and 20s except for Gamma. So he was really locked and loaded to do. I think 18 hammers. When he would change it, he said. Anyway, that's not important. You can play him at 19, 20, you can play both. But what you can do is you can set up this really weird, if you can recycle books and you're against a team that's a physical attacking team, it's really hard, to screw with that team. If it's Ultron, M.O.D.O.K, and Doctor Strange, Supreme Strange, we don't talk about normal Strange. No one takes him. Who are you going to attack in that team? Because their other threat could be Voodoo. It could be, it could be Taskmaster. It's like Taskmaster and Wong, right? Who cares about those two? For the most part, if you attack him, you attack him. But when you have 14 threats of 5 defense with blanks, wilds, reverse pierces, bodyguards, sacrificing the grunts, like, man, that's tough. That is tough to fight against. If you're like a Logan X-23 type, anyone with physical attacks that depend on it for damage. People will claim like energy attacks are how you beat. I buy it, but yes, energy attacks are probably the best type of attack against Convocation. Yes, but it's not like everybody's running around with 2 energy defense and like helpless against it. Like Strange still reverse pierces it. Ultron still 4 defense. He's still 4 defense with bodyguard. Like 3 defense with bodyguards. It's not the end of the world to have play against energy attackers. So yeah, I mean that's it. I don't. I'm not going to talk about his cards because I don't think they're. I think they are both very cool and they have some funny plays you can do with them. And I would consider mind games just as to screw with people. And I might like try it just to see. But the power cost and just the gimmicky of it, you're probably not worth going all in on one of his cards and just taking like fallback and stuff like that and saying, all right. He's not the main plan. Like he's a good plan. He's a good splash, but he's not the like he has to do everything. And I want to have his card to be like perfect here or there. No, I'm actually really like the idea of him. In fact, I went and bought him before I even played a game with him. I believed in it so much from a solo convocation standpoint. In fact, his list of solo convocation is probably 1 or 2 models off mine. I think he had M.O.D.O.K where I had Ancient One, and then there's still consideration in the solo world of like, do you take? I would say right now, without going too much in the solo convocation, because I can do another video on that. It would be like, do you take a 2 threat like Bullseye so you can run some interesting 17s, or do you take Ancient One so you can like sub out Voodoo sometimes? I haven't thought about that enough yet, but we'll go there. But M.O.D.O.K 2. I think very interesting splash. If you're running Ultron 2 like I am and have been, I think he is a very nice pick to put in there. In fact, you can't run all 3, but it also gives splashes that all have terrain throws. People always talk about terrain throws in Convocation. You would have Ultron, M.O.D.O.K, and Rhino are 3 of my big splashes. I mean, I splash like 6 models, but 3 of them would be those 3. And they all have size. I mean, Lizard's in my list back, unfortunately. But he has a good use, so I'm not going to complain about him. Those 4 people are all big base bumpers with terrain throws. Like, I mean, you can't... I mean, I love bump. I mean, half the reason I play Convocation is for the bump. The other half is because I love Doctor Strange Supreme. And I think he fits the bill. I'm actually... I just thought of the teleporting... getting to the midpoint in one go today. And so, if you have last activation and you can go with M.O.D.O.K and Strange last and, you get to put M.O.D.O.K in the middle most of the time, depending on what you're against, there won't be somebody who, like, can just get to him turn 1. Or, like, if they can, it's, like, 1 model. And you're like, okay, that's fine. 1 model can attack M.O.D.O.K turn 1. I have bump. I get power. Like, it's not like it's great for them either. You do 3 damage to him, and all of a sudden he starts with, 4 power for a spender off a point or something like that. Because, again, the problem with attacking M.O.D.O.K is, that I see in my head is, 1, if you do some damage and they pop books turn 2, you're like, shit. And 2, if you give him power, and all of a sudden next turn he has power to sack to the grunts, like, what are you doing? Like, you're just giving him power to sack to the grunts, and now you're not going to be able to attack him again. So there is some disincentive to attack him. I think the hardest part about playing M.O.D.O.K in those type of teams, because at like 19 you have to run a 3, which would be Taskmaster, which we'll talk about. And I guess the only reason I'd say, Mordo would be better, is you have somebody to fund books. Otherwise, Doctor Strange is funding books on turn 2, which kind of feels bad. But you might just do it and say, screw it, Depends on the situation, of course. Anyway, that's my little quick plug. It wasn't quick at all. For M.O.D.O.K, and thanks for the ideas.